When you study certain things, there are some melodies that often get connected with that. Just like when we were doing Mesillat Yesharim, we didn't sing a Hasidic melody, we sang closer to, how would I put it, what in a Musar yeshiva would be sung. So the melody we sang was one that Chernichovsky set a poem to, but we had other words. I'll just do the melody. La 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 more, and I invite you to do harmony and to sing it along as it would be like an invocation prayer, so that what we are about to learn should go where it belongs, okay? La 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 la. What this melody in its own way is saying is, I would like to live a better, a holier life. I would like to live closer to God. And the closeness to God is called dveikut. I'd like to be in dveikut with you. And there is that longing and yearning that goes with la 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 la. La 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 la. You know, I don't know if many of you have forgiven yourself. Forgiven, that's a good word. Been generous enough to yourself to have a holy daydream. A sacred daydream. What would it be like to have a sacred daydream? What would be if I could be a tzaddik? What would be if I could be one of the Lamed Vovnikis, you know, who is holding the world together? How would I have to behave? How would I have to be? And to dream a dream about that. Well, I want you to know that's where my mind was when I first encountered the Mesillat Yesharim. How do you live the good and holy life? Now, when I was resting before, I was sort of asking Rabbi Moshe Hayyim Luzzatto what I should tell of any of his biography. He said no. He said, I'm dead already. You should do what I wrote, because that's what's the important thing. So I tell you what, here I have my English copy, but I will take the Hebrew book, and I will do this running translation. You can check me out if you want. But more important is that you should listen deeply, and you take this along basically so you can do what he tells you to do, which you will hear in just a moment. I'm beginning with Hakdamat HaMechaber. Like in Yiddish you say, before I begin to speak, I want to say a few words. So he begins with his book and says, I want you to understand what this book is all about. Amar HaMechaber, the author speaks. This book I did not bring together, I did not write it in order to teach people things that they do not know, but to remind you of that which you already know, and that which is clear and published and well known among you. You will not find in most of my words but things that most human beings know already, and they have no doubt about them. Okay? Let me go back. Something that's already known to you. Reb Shlomo had a wonderful way in which he would teach about the Torah of the 9 months. Because the rabbis tell us that while we're in the womb of our mother, there a light is on, and an angel is teaching us everything we need to know in a lifetime. And just as we are born, he hits us under the nose right in this hollow, and we forget everything. So the question is, why bother in the first place? So the answer is, and here's how Reb Shlomo put it. How do I know that I found my real teacher, my emissaire teacher? If everything he teaches me, I know already. Deep down, I know it already, you know? Deep down, I know, the angel taught me that before. I have a moment of anamnesis. My amnesia is gone for a moment, and this is one. So he's saying, look, I'm teaching you stuff that you already know. However, just because so well known are these things, and since the truth of what I am about to speak is so clear and open to everyone, so it's something that you see in front of your eyes all the time so that you don't see it anymore. So he says, because al kein hahele mehem matzui me'od ve'ashikra rabah. Just because you know these things so well, they're so well accepted, that they do not stand out in your awareness so much, and there's an easy way to forget that. Therefore, the use that you will get from this book does not come from reading it once. Because, as I said, it's almost sure that you will not find anything that is really new after that you have read it for the first time, that you didn't know before you even read it, even a little bit of it. The good benefit of this will arise for you from repeating this time and again, because things will come up in your memory sharper, those that we tend to forget naturally out of our behavior. And you'll put on your heart that very task that is being asked of us, which we hide from our eyes. Okay? I stop for a moment and want to say, why did I pick these kind of things to do now? It's so much easier to speak about a topic than to sit with a book and to learn with a group of people. Because, Salos Zachandosh, and I don't know how to say it in Yiddish better, you know. It flows much easier. However, so many of you know that there is a Bhagavad Gita, there's an Upanishad, there is a St. John of the Cross, there is all kinds of psychology. So how come that you don't know the equal kinds of books of spiritual growth that are on our side? Do you see what I'm saying? Most people don't know. If you say Mesillat Yesharim in Brooklyn, they would know what you're talking about right away, you know? But if you say Bhagavad Gita, they will say, "Vos?" Boulder is in this way different. This is why I felt it was so important to bring to you some of our classics and how they address the individual soul to help into consciousness. Are we clear? Okay. So I begin. V'tireh, and you will see, im titbonein, if you will only pay attention, behove berov ha'olam, you will see, if you look around, what do people do in society? Many people who have very sharp intellects and they're very clear, they put their mind into all the subtle understandings and wisdoms and sciences and theories in great depth, each one according to the inclination of his intellect and his personal longing. There are some people who will be very much interested in physics and the natural sciences. Other ones will go very much into architecture. Others will turn to different kinds of work, and others will go for holy teachings. That's to say, the study of the Holy Torah, and that's wonderful. But wait a minute. Among them, there are those who want very much to argue the sharp pilpulim, the sharp arguments of the Talmud, of the laws. Some of them enjoy the midrashim, all the stories woven around the text of the Bible, and there are some who are interested in the codes, just what is the law, how is it being given. But there are very few of those people of this kind that are going to set time aside for looking deep into themselves and for learning anything that has to do with the perfection of service to God. Okay? Now, I'm going to stop here for a minute. We have biological age, and we have emotional age, and most of the time our emotional age is a little bit behind our biological age. If someone were to ask, what is your spiritual age? That is to say, if someone accompanied your consciousness all during your lifetime with a stopwatch, how many weeks, I'm giving you a lot of credit, have you spent considering the issue of how to perfect your service to God? Because for him this becomes very, very clear. Why are we here? We are here for a purpose, and if we don't serve that purpose, in German you would say, der Zweck hat zum Zweck, den Zweck zu bezwecken, und wenn der Zweck den Zweck nicht bezweckt, da hat der ganze Zweck keinen Zweck. The purpose of the purpose is to purpose the purpose. But when the purpose doesn't purpose the purpose, then there's no purpose to the purpose. That's the basic statement. And when I think about, I am so glad, so happy. A broche on the couple of Rick Warren, who did a good tefillah today and didn't give us any reasons for having belly aches about that. You know, the Supreme Court judge could have done a little bit better, but he did a good prayer. And what was the title of his book? A Purpose-Driven Life. And he, you know, today talks about the same issue that Moshe Hayyim Luzzatto talks about. What is the perfection of the service? It is the love for God, it is a deep respect and awe, and it is the closeness. And all these parts are parts of how one is a chassid. He wrote this before the Baal Shem Tov, just I want you to know, not too long before the Baal Shem Tov, but he wrote it before the Baal Shem Tov. The word chassidut to him, Hasidism, to him has a meaning of being able to be generous with God, not to be niggardly with God. You know, there's some people who have the sense, here's my obligation, I fulfilled my obligation, goodbye, you know. When it comes to davening, in Yiddish you say, hat abgedavend, you know. He just davened it away very quick. But if you care for it, it's different. So it is not because the other people would also admit that these are important things if you were to ask them about that. What is the great root of it all? Because who could call himself a wise person if he doesn't get really clear about these things? But they just don't pay attention to these because everybody says, so what? I know that already. I know that already. I like to point out that if Eve tells me, Zalman, I love you, and I say, you told me that yesterday, what's new? I would be so stupid, wouldn't I?
Yeah. Pretty stupid.
Because the statement is not to inform me of something. The statement is to express every time I feel that feeling. That's to say, I get a heart burp and I want to tell you from the heart burp, I love you, you know? So that is the kind of stuff. If you say it is information, I got the information. If you say it is beyond information, then one time isn't enough. So he says, therefore, they don't think that they need to spend much time on that. And they consider this kind of stuff very simple. The funny thing is that they think that if you don't study the more subtle stuff in the Talmud and so on and so forth, you have a very simple mind. And the point will be that when people see you open a book like the Mesillat Yesharim, let's say, and not a big Gemara or something else, they will say, no, what can he do? He's one of those simple people. So he reads this kind of stuff. So he's making fun of the people and their attitude and says, however, the fact that there is this custom, it is very bad, both for those who are smart and who are not so smart, because it brings about that the true fervor, the true devotion will be missing from them. And it will be very, very seldom that you can find it anywhere in the world, because even the wise ones, because they don't pay much attention to it, won't know it, and especially the ones who are not so wise, because they don't get it. If you were to ask some people, wherein lies devotion? Most people would say that's to say a lot of long confessions to have fast days, to break the ice and dip in the icy water, to take on all kinds of difficult hardships. All of them, the mind doesn't agree, and you can't get settled mind. The true devotion that is wanted and that is delightful is very far away from such an issue, from such an understanding. It's a simple thing. And here he comes with an Aramaic thing, milta, de lo ramia lea de enosh lavadate. If you don't keep on pointing to something, people don't become aware of it. So you always have to sometimes point to it. ואף על פי שכבר קבועים בלב כל האדם הישר והתחלותיו ויסודותיו. Most people will know all these things already from the beginning, how to proceed with this and so on and so forth, but they won't actualize it, they won't exert themselves in it. They will see the details and they won't recognize them, and they'll pass on them, and they won't pay attention to them. I'm going to skip a little bit now. If we all had the same text, I would be able to say, now you go to page so-and-so, and the second paragraph, and there you will find it. So you're on your own. Okay? And because all these things have become really clear to people, how one needs to create that perfection of the service, and the duty of making it pure and clean. Because if it is filled with other motives, it is not well accepted by God. In fact, it is shunned and is considered ugly. For God searches the hearts of all people, and He understands all the drives of people. And what are we going to say in the day when we are being called to task, that we were not paying attention to this, and we left this so much so, all that which was put upon our shoulders, because the real question is, Ma Hashem Elokeinu Shoel Me'imanu. What is it that the Lord our God is asking from us? Hayitachein, is it possible that a person should try to do all these kinds of theories and things that we don't have any duty to do, and sharp pilpul from which no fruit will come, and laws that we no longer are involved in, like the laws for sacrifices, and that which we need to offer to our Creator as a great duty, that we would leave to habit and leave and do it only as there is a Hebrew phrase, mitzvat anashim melumada. What this means is the way in which the bourgeois get rid of their sacred obligations. Mitzvat anashim melumada. People have learned how to do it, they do it, and so on and so forth. Look, how many times has someone said, "How are you?" Do they really want to find out? Do you see what I'm saying? A greeting like "How are you" is mitzvat anashim melumada. If I stop and say, "I'm so glad you asked, it's been not such a good time for me," and I start kvetching about that, the guy will find an excuse very quick to go away. He didn't mean that when he asked, "How are you?" Okay? So what is it that the Lord our God is asking? Why should we do all these other things that are not the core of it? If we will not pay attention to these things, what the true awe is, and what the branches of that awe is, that's interesting. In every book of spiritual direction, you have the person trying to show you how your consciousness and your behavior works, right? Because without that, you are not going to be able to improve or do anything, you know? If all the time you live in the shopping mall mentality, you're not going to be able to do anything on the inside for yourself. So it's really important to ask these questions. But then, there is also the issue that most of us don't have good language for feeling. We have good language for sensation, in which we would discern between so many fragrances and so many colors and so many tastes and so many things in sensation. But how would you talk about the varieties of awe that you have experienced in life, you know? Most of the time we haven't learned how to speak about that. There's the awe of the Grand Canyon, there's the awe of a baby being born, there's the awe of a sky, you know. There's so many different kinds of awe, but there's also the awe that comes when you imagine that at some point you will be totally transparent and stand before the all-seeing eye of God, with all your life being fully and completely seen. That's another kind of awe, right? So you see that he's recognizing that it's not only a simple thing awe, but it has branches too. And he wants to teach you about these things. How shall we acquire these, and how will we be able to flee from the vanities of this world that is engaged in making us forget what the whole purpose is? Okay. The same thing will happen to love. Love is not something that I was walking along, minding my business when out of an orange-colored sky, slam, bam, alakazam. Do you remember that? There's this manhole called love, and I fell in. Okay. And
I remember that.
Huh?
I remember that.
Yeah, you remember that. Both the song and the experience, right? Okay. So he is saying, love is not something that happens to you. Love is something you have to cultivate in the heart. And you have to find the right means that will lead you to that. And how can they be found in us? From where will come that closeness, that fervor in our soul for God and for His Torah, if we will not turn ourselves? You know what the word turning has a sense of attitude, you know? What is my attitude? Is my attitude, if I use the word attitude like steering, you know? Is my attitude in the direction of God? That's called Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. I've set the Lord before me always. Or Ki panu alai orev velo panim. They've turned their back to me and not their face. You see what I'm saying? Attitude here is an important thing. And he says, what do we have to do to create this attitude? How will we purify our thought? I just want to keep saying this, you know. Many of you who have tried various kinds of meditation have come across this problem. How do we purify our thought? Or how you say it in Boulder, how do we still our monkey mind? Right? If we are not going to try and exert ourselves to clean it up from all the flaws that just being involved in physical life create habits for us. all of these modes of being need to be adjusted and straightened out. But who is going to do this for you if you will not do it yourself? If we will not pay attention to these things and watch them with in great detail, if we will pay deep attention to these things, we would find them, each one according to the truth for ourselves. And not only that, we would be able to find a way of how to, what's the word? Move within our consciousness and teach it to other people also. Okay? Now that's a very important thing that he's putting out. Without, nobody from the outside can really command you or teach you anything about introspection. Okay? Freud was trying to do something like that. He said, lie down on the couch and say whatever comes to your mind, which was one way of saying, empty out your mind, find out what's going on in your mind, talk about it. But the people who were before him, who were writing these books of Musar, were saying, you have to have an examination of conscience. And if you have an examination of conscience, then you will go inside of yourself and you ask yourself the question, what was my motive when I said this? What was my motive when I did that? You know? And it is by clarifying the motives and then saying which ones are the desirable motives and which ones are not. Again, I will skip because I want you to get a chance to talk too, and I'm going to the beginning of the first chapter. Go to the beginning of the first chapter. I used to know the first few chapters by heart. It was so important, you know, when he said, do it again, you really have to know it. He begins in this beautiful fashion. First, the chapter 1 is called An Explanation of the General Rule of a Person's Duty in his World. And then he begins, I'll read you the 4 words and listen carefully to the initials. Yesod HaChasidut V'Shoresh HaAvodah HaTmimah. Did you get it? It is like, and you will see that the other writers whom we will study will do similar things. How would you do that if you are a Muslim? You would say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the All-Merciful, Compassionate. This way, they put the name Yud Hey Vav Hey right in there. Did you ever notice that you begin, when you make Kiddush on Friday night, you begin in the middle of the sentence? Or rather, the end of the sentence says, Yom HaShishi. Vahi Erev, Vahi Boker, Yom HaShishi, Vayichulu HaShamayim, V'ha'aretz. So, what kind of a thing is it you should begin making Kiddush with a chopped off part of a sentence? But because it is Yom HaShishi, Vayichulu HaShamayim, so it tells you that the divine name is composed of 2 parts of week and 2 parts of Shabbos. Do you get that? And so when it says in the davening, Ukedoshim b'chol yom yahalalu chasela, there are the holy ones, every day will praise you well. But there is a reading that says, those people are holy b'chol yom, you know, every day. They are the ones who are the real praise for God. So what you see is, you begin a book with these 4 letters. So, what is the rule? What is the basic situation for, you know what? You have it here in front of you. Could I have a volunteer who will read out loud? Please. Go ahead.
The foundation of saintliness.
A little louder.
The foundation of saintliness and the root of perfection in the service of God lies in a man's coming to see clearly and to recognize as a truth the nature of his duty in the world and the end towards which he should direct his vision and his aspiration in all of his labors all the days of his life.
Of his life, okay? He has a couple of words in Hebrew that need a little unpacking. He says, how do we go about finding out what our duty in life is? Sheyitbarer, it will be made clear. When you sort things out, you know, there is an inner sorting that is going on. How could I say this any better? When you make priorities for the next day, that's a sorting. Okay? When the issue comes about how should I take my service to God and make it powerful and real, I have to do some sorting. And some of it I'm going to leave behind. Some of it I will have to say, I take this out, this not, this not, this not. You know what? Hasidim always speak about this as birurim. Birurim. What does birurim stand for? When the world was created, there was this crash, as it were. And sacred vessels, we don't even know what that means, of a very high level shattered, and the sparks of those vessels lodged themselves all over the world, and our job is to go and find them. So you don't have to tell people in Colorado, you know, in Golden, Colorado, what that's like. Have you ever seen somebody pan for gold? Yeah? That's yitbarer. That's what it is. You know, you have a lot of sand, you have a lot of earth, and you're looking for the nugget. Okay? That's yitbarer. The second word is yitamet. It should become truth for you. Now this one is very important too. There's so many people I could ask great questions about life. How should life be? And they would give me good answers. But if I asked them, how much of what you are saying is in your reality map? You know what I'm saying? Gravity is in my reality map. I know that I can drop something, it'll fall down. That's part of my reality map. What about it is Shabbos in my reality map? I lost you? Did I lose you? No? Do you know what I mean? There's this, oi, Shabbos. Oi, Shabbos, you know. You're in the middle of doing something, a habitual thing. You're moving over to the computer, let us say, and all of a sudden it goes, oi, Shabbos, you know. That's what I mean. It's part of your reality map, do you see? It has become emes for you. There are certain kinds of things that now have to become emes, and they haven't yet become emes for the rest of the world. For instance, thou shalt not steal was not for Mr. Madoff an emes, you know. We are learning about green, and green has to become emes for us. We are learning about working together in this country. It's not depending, the leadership needs a followership, you know, and we have to be really behind, and that has to become emes for us. Now, can you imagine if we hear some pronunciation of the government, and if we heard it about a half a year ago, we wouldn't have said it's emes. You go to the media, you know, how much emes is there? Do you see why he is stressing? Yitbarer v'yitametz etzel ha'adam ma chovato le'olamo. This is really his task in the world, and he has sorted it out, and it's clear. All right, would you continue reading, but louder, please?
Our sages of blessed memory have taught us that man was created for the sole purpose of rejoicing in God and deriving pleasure from the splendor of his presence. For this is true joy and the greatest pleasure that can be found. The place where this joy may truly be...
All right, let's stop for a moment before the place where that happens, okay? Ecstasy. The point he is saying is not that God has given us these tasks that we have to do them in order to muchazach, you know? In order to have trouble. I remember the other day I was telling our friends who are going to be rabbis about that mashal, how the little pigeon came to God like all the other animals. You know, the dog came and said, what is my job? And God said that you will have to be man's best friend and he'll kick you, and you know, all that kind of stuff, you know. And the pigeon came and hopped around, and God said, you can eat grain and this and that and so on. A week later, the pigeon comes back and says, dear God, I've got trouble. There are these cats and they're chasing me and they've already ripped feathers from me. Oh, God said, you're right. Let me give you wings. And he puts on the wings on the shoulders of the pigeon, and the pigeon hops away. A week later comes back, Gewalt, Gewalt. Before I was able to hop faster, now I have got this burden on my shoulders. And God says, Oy, Narel, a little fool, I gave you those wings to fly with, you know? So when he is now saying to us, what's the purpose? What does God really have in mind behind all that kind of stuff? Is that we should have a pleasure beyond all pleasures, an ecstasy beyond all ecstasies. Now, who and where do we have to be in order to collect on that? Okay, so please continue.
The place where this joy may truly be derived is the world to come, which was expressly created to provide for it. But the path to the object of our desires is this world, as our sages of blessed memory have said. This world is like a corridor to the world to come.
All right, you get a sense of, you know, the rabbis talked about it as saying that this world is a vestibule in which you prepare yourself to go into the palace. I would want to say it's the dressing room before you go on the stage, you know? It's that little room where you put on whatever you're going to be put on, and look in the mirror and check it out and do it all. This is the world of preparation. This is the world of preparation. However, while this is the world in which we have the preparation, the means through which a person will come to enter into the palace are the mitzvahs which God had commanded us, and the place of doing those commandments is just in this world. Therefore the person was put into this world first, that he should acquire the means to be able to come to that place which is prepared for him in the world to come, where he will be sated with the great good which he has acquired through these means. And this is what the rabbi said, Today you do it, tomorrow you get a reward. Now I'm going to stop reading and we'll talk a little bit. You asked a question before, you said, you are just waiting for how I'm going to describe the mitzvahs. Right? Well, years ago, I used to give a series of lectures on technology and religion, technology and worship. And I would talk about how we live in the world, you know? And it's very, very clear that if you are a farmer, that there are certain ways in which you have to honor the earth and also do your social obligations. Which is that you can't harvest the entire field, you have to leave some for the poor. You get the idea? How do you translate that today? You know? Imagine I have a store and the store is my field. And in that field, I have customers. And they buy and I sell and all that. But I have a box that's near the door of things that are not necessarily modish anymore, you know? But if somebody needs a warm coat from last year's cut or something like this, they can get it. Do you see? That would be taking the same corner of the field that we had and put it into the store. So I'm sure that all of you have some notions of what are contemporary mitzvahs and what are not. So I'd like you to call out some contemporary mitzvahs that you would be aware of.
Well, sometimes you work for free.
Loud.
It just seems right. Sometimes you work for free.
I didn't hear that.
Sometimes you work for free.
Excuse me, I will put my ears in. If I have them in while I'm talking, then I speak much lower. If I need to hear what you're saying, I need to turn them high. So here we go, and let me hear what you said.
Sometimes you work for free.
You work...
Sometimes you work and you're getting paid, and sometimes you work for free.
Right. Volunteering definitely is a mitzvah, right? And all this has to do with helping, with being of help to people, and not necessarily to friends. Ki tire chamor sonacha, rovetz tachat masao, v'chadalta me'azov lo, azov, ta'azov imo. If you see the donkey of your enemy and he is suffering, is falling down from the load and can't carry on further, then you must help him and get to his side, you know. Mi besarcha al titalim. Don't close your eyes when you see a guy in the corner with a sign saying that he's homeless and he needs a buck or something. Do you see what I'm saying? These are the ways in which these are easy to recognize mitzvahs. Okay, can you show me some harder ones?
Recycling.
Pardon?
Recycling.
Recycling, that's very clear. And where do we go for that? We go for that place that if you have, I'm just trying to always tie it back if I can to Torah, so you see that this is a mitzvah. That if you are laying siege on a city, and there are fruit trees there, and you want to create and make a what do they call that thing?
Battering ram.
Huh?
Battering ram. Catapults.
Catapults?
Not either a catapult or a ram, you know? Don't cut down the fruit tree. And it says, there do not destroy. From which we learn that any piece, the question that came up when Reb Mark was saying, should he run off more copies or not, And we were considering, should we do that or not? And we came to the conclusion, Bal Tashchit. We don't want to destroy more paper this way, do you see? So, and that comes from that old law, then and there. What about a seatbelt? Is a seatbelt a mitzvah? That's good, yeah, but I go one better. Ki tivne bayit v'asita ma'ake legagecha pen yipol anofel mimenu, right? That when you build a house, that you are to make like a fence around the roof so that nobody should fall down. So we learn from this that a safety device is rooted in the Torah. What I'm trying to say is that this is really...
What did Yehuda say?
Pardon?
What was the line that Yehuda said?
You should guard your soul, your lives very well.
That our health, the responsibility for our health is ours. Guard your life very carefully. Ushmartem me'od lenafshotechem. Okay?
I thought of another one. He who saves a single life is as if you saved the whole world.
That's wonderful. They gambled it from us. Did you know that? They claim it's in the Quran first. Okay. Well, anyway, we'll leave that right now. But take a look what has happened. It becomes very, very clear that we have some mitzvahs that have to do with other people. Those are bein adam lachavero, between one person and another person. And we have some mitzvahs that are between us and the environment. And now when Rabbi Yehudis was saying health is our concern too, so we have a mitzvah to ourselves. Now, what is behind all the mitzvahs? If you don't get that clear, if you think that you are the origin of the mitzvah, you know what I'm saying? Imagine there is somebody who you just hand a buck, they need it, and you say, and I'm doing a good thing. I did it, okay? It's not a mitzvah anymore. What I'm trying to say is that if you can do that because you see the divine in the other person, and that this is commanding you to do that. Do you hear what I'm saying? Mitzvah always takes that there is a mitzaveh. There is someone who commands. And that has something to do with our consciousness, because most of the time we feel that our consciousness is private. What I'm thinking, you don't know what I'm thinking. No. But how come that I'm thinking? What makes the jump between my neurons and my awareness? And in that place, we speak of the knower, the witness, the God within us who is aware. So I can never be so opaque that if I am aware of something, then God is already aware of that. It's in the Psalms. By the way, I brought a whole bunch of books, and that's my translation of the Psalms, and I think you will enjoy it. It's something that you don't have to feel pious when you recite it, okay? It's really so that it comes from the heart, the thing. And so, in that way in which we are, what the psalm is saying goes like this. This is 84, Psalm 84. Binu bo'arim ba'am. Is it 84? 94. Binu bo'arim ba'am uchsilim matai taskilu. Pay attention, fools among the people, he says. When are you going to understand it? Hanota ozen, ha'alo yishma. He who plants an ear, can that one not hear? Im yotzer ayin, if he creates an eye, does he not see? Okay. Hayoser goyim, halo yochiach. you want him to tell the nations that they should behave. Do you think he won't ask you the same? Okay. Hamelamed Adam Da'at, he is the one who goads us into awareness. Okay? I didn't do too unfair with this translation, did I? Malmad, Bakar, etc., goat, etc. Okay. So, there are some mitzvahs that are for ourselves. And now I'd like you to sit with your neighbor a little bit and have a conversation about what does this business mean to you, or what the purpose of life. Next time I will bring you material from Bachya Ibn Pakuda, who wrote a book called The Duties of the Heart. But now I'd like you to have a chance to talk to each other, and then you will raise some real questions, because the book is available to read. If you want to find out who was Luzzatto, I found him on Wikipedia. Very, very good article. And the Judaica has a very long article. So all these things that you want to find out about him, you can find out on your own. But this stuff about what is the purpose and how do I keep myself focused on the purpose, that's the real question. So would you just turn to your neighbor and start a conversation?
Well, according to him, or
Yeah, but it's also like for me, my tradition too. I think that some they still
Would anyone care to share something that has come up in your conversation? If you do, please stand up and let's hear it. You had such an animated conversation. Go ahead.
Well, when I think about my purpose, I think about two things. I think about my spiritual practice and completing here so that I can move on. And the other aspect is what I call my ministry, which is really my action of service in the world and being responsible for bringing forward that service into the world.
Amen.
So that's...
Amen. Yes, purpose and mitzvah. Very good. Anyone else? Yes.
Well, for me, there are certain disciplines and very simple disciplines like staying present, listening inside, listening from the depth of other people, remembering to smile. Things, very simple things that are my practice in my daily life.
Thank you. Notice how much of that is attitudinal thing, when it says you should show every person a sever panim yafot. You should show every person the kind of face that invites warmth and relationship. Sometimes when you walk through the streets of New York and you see how people have these blinders on, they don't want to see anyone coming at them. If you look and smile at them, they look at you, you're nuts. But sever panim yafot, this kind of attitude is important. All right, so we see there's a lot of attitudinal things for which we can get ourselves, we can understand and look inside of ourselves and say, did we do that with the right attitude? How did we meet that other person and who were we at that time? Now that's all the easy stuff. Does anybody have any hard stuff? Yes.
Who are we being for ourselves as well? Who are we being for ourselves? How we treat ourselves.
Amen.
And how we honor God in doing that.
That's very good to say. The God within me also says, honor me. And ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, ani Hashem. Love the Lord, love your neighbor as yourself, I am the Lord. Which is that saying, that you... And you can't love the other one if you don't love yourself. That's very clear, sure. All right, anyone else? Yes, please.
I was just thinking as I was listening to you that sometimes it's about doing, but sometimes it's about receiving so that others can do. It's about being present for others.
Amen. Let me say something about receiving. Receiving is a good word because the word Kabbalah, for instance, means the receiving, And it says not that I am passive to somebody's giving. There is a receiving that makes the giver feel good too, You have made the space where you can receive, and you send out the grateful energies to that person. Yes. I'll take a few more, but I'm running out of steam. Yes.
Well, we came up with the same points of connection in your life can also be the points of distraction.
That calls for Rashi.
So that those relationships in your life, your job, your family, are the points of connection with God, but they can also be the points that can take you away, that consciousness and awareness.
If I were to start saying, what is the what's the word? The sickness of the clergy is that they're being busy with holy stuff keeps them away from God, yeah? And it's very true. That's very true. And what I want to really get to more than anything else is that you should have, that God should be a friend to you. For most people you have a sense of, if you read the Siddur, Yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalon, shemei dekutcha b'recho. It's always, you're pushing him up, you're saying, Shochenat, Marom, v'kadosh shemo. You sit in the holy place and we have nothing, and you're looking down and checking us all out, what we are doing. That was just the same way as our mitzvahs depend on the technology in which we live, on the surroundings in which we live. Our theology also depends on what kind of reality map we have. So when you ask yourself the question about God, one of the things that I did in my book, Jewish with Feeling, is the first chapter I called it, Oi, what a word. Because so many people get stuck on that word God that they see something alien and different. It's true at one point the prophets were saying, Ki lo machshavotay machshavotechem. Your thoughts are not my thoughts, and so on and so forth. That's true also. But it is also true that my heart would not do the next heartbeat if God didn't do the heart beating in me. I wouldn't take the next breath if that wouldn't happen. So if God is close, so close to me, in the Quran he has it there, that God is closer to you than the vein in your neck. Another way of saying that, how close it is. V'yadata hayom v'ashavot alovecha You should know today, Ki Hashem hu Elokim b'shamayim imal v'la'aretz b'tachad ein od. Nothing else exists. In other words, our existence is nothing but God playing us. So I come back now for a landing because I don't have to. The Hudson River is getting too close to me at this point. So I want to say, I wanted to introduce you. Rabbi Moshe Hayyim Luzzatto. He is a Renaissance man. He lives in Italy. He writes plays. He wrote an opera. He is a poet. And besides everything else, he has a transmission coming to him that he calls like a voice that's speaking through him, you know? And he writes these wonderful things out, and I tell you, people were so nasty to him because the genius that he had, that what he was in touch with, was so awesome to them that they would try and say, just because he was saying the whole work is to bring the world to redemption. No, if he would have said that in anywhere where the Buddhists are, they would have said, sure, he's a bodhisattva. You know? He wants to bring the world to redemption. But when you talk about bringing the world to redemption after Shabbatai Tzvi, you know, maybe he is imagining he's a Mashiach, you know? So you get to see what kind of problems he had to go through. People say you shouldn't study the Kabbalah until you're 40. If he and Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, and I could go on and on and on with other people and said that they shouldn't start, they would have never lived that day because they died younger than that. So he was an amazing person. I'd want to say that what Rick Warren has done from Christianity, I would like to see someone write the Mesillat Yesharim, rewrite it in terms of living the purposeful life as a Jew. And notice how many sentences I was able to bring from Bible and from the rabbis to fortify that notion that what our purpose is to serve God, and that this service is to bring us to the greatest reward that there can be. That's the ecstasy that we can have. If you can imagine all the ecstasies that people ever had, you know, all at once, and not dying from it. You know, that's the kind of thing he promises us. So he goes and says, I have to show you that there is a way. And I show you this in this book because it turns out that there was a teacher by the name of Reb Pinchas ben Yair, and he said, the way to go about doing this thing is as follows. Said Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, Torah, if you study Torah, maybe lidei zehirut. It brings you to be careful, Let me say what I mean by that. How many times have I said, oops, after the fact? If I could teach myself to say oops before I do it, that's called zehirut. Okay? That I really have learned that. If I got my zehirut down, you know, when I'm asking my question, what am I about to do? Clarity of purpose. I love this story. Every time I get a chance to tell it, I tell it. Reb Michal Zlotcheva loved to think that if he could only have 26 candles at his Shabbos table, he would be the most happy person that there could be. 26 is the numerical value of the divine name, and he is so happy about that. But he's poor, and his wife is saying the kinderlich don't have shoes, and so on and so forth. How is he ever going to get more than 2 candles for Shabbos? So it happens that a rich man comes and asks him for a blessing and leaves him quite a sum of money. And he said, aha! Today I have enough for the shikha, for the children and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to get the 26 candles. And he goes over to the mezuzah like a person who's doing oops before. Watch that, right? Going over the mezuzah and saying, Hineni muchanu mezamon. I'm ready to go and to do a mitzvah. I'm ready to go and buy the candles for Shabbos. The purpose of the Shabbos candles is there should be Shalom bayis. And he says, oops! Shalom bayis, harmony in the family. He figured there wouldn't be harmony in the family if we home 26 candles that Shabbos. Do you understand? That's the hirut. The next part is, he says, if you learn that, and I'll show you the way to do that, that brings you to zerizut, to alacrity, to do something in such a way that you don't have to, your starting motor, doesn't have to be revved up before you start doing something, okay? Zrizut, if you got your way of doing things quickly and with excitement, that brings you to purity, which brings you to a way of looking at the world in such a way it's called perishut, to be separated from it. In other words, to say, I am not part of that what the world wants me to make me part of. You know what I'm saying? You watch a commercial, what does a commercial wants to make you part of? To buy, to shop, to do that, right? Perishut is a way of saying, aha, and that's not for me. You get the idea? The ability to be able to separate oneself from compulsion. When you have perishut, it brings you to another level of purity. It's not just clean, but you're now pure. You know the difference between that? Clean is you aren't dirty, But pure has something to do with the pureness of heart. This purity brings you to devotion. The devotion brings you to humility. The humility brings you to be careful about sin. And to be careful about sin brings you to holiness. And holiness brings you to Ruach HaKodesh, to the Holy Spirit. So what he is showing you here in this book is a ladder of consciousness that we can climb, and we can, if we so want to, become the kind of person that he says. And he calls that book Mesillat Yesharim. Mesillah is a small passage, is a small way. Derech is a big way, He's saying it's not a path that many people are going to walk, but only the ones who are straight of heart will walk that path. So, having introduced you to Rabbi Moshe Hayyim Luzzatto, I am delegated to tell you that if you will pursue some of the things, even the least little bit of what is in this holy book, that you deserve to have a blessing that this coming year should be at least 20% easier than the way it looks to be. Say, Amen.